Thank you so much for joining us for Meet Culture of Respect, the virtual highlight session. Thank you so much to Jordana and Colleen for inviting us to participate. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all today. And I do say talk because we certainly don't want this to be a one-way conversation, and we have some questions at the end, some kind of ways to engage with you all and hear a little bit more about your experience. So hopefully your technology is more compliant than mine and you can get yourself off mute faster than I can. So this is us. If you don't recognize us back in our more groomed, days back pre-COVID. But my name is Allison Tombros Korman. I'm the Senior Director of Culture of Respect. And this is just a little bit about me and my background, kind of where I came from. I am a proud graduate of the University of Michigan, and I did my graduate work, funny, we were just talking about graduate programs, at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, also very much a decision motivated by geography and lots of other factors that I'm happy to talk about. But I have been working in public health basically my whole career. I started out doing sexual and reproductive health and rights, working with a kind of slew of organizations that you see here, and then really moved into the violence prevention space when I started with Culture of Respect back in 2013, I believe it was. And in 2015, Culture of Respect became part of Naspa, and here I am.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Henkle, and you can see my journey up on the screen. I am actually a social worker by trade, and I know Jordana would be happy to get you in touch with me if any of you are considering that route for grad school. I think it's a really unique way of approaching student affairs, but a really valuable way as well. I was actually a part of the Culture of Respect at the collective prior to my time joining the team on one of my prior campuses, where I worked as a higher education case manager and did a lot of our work on prevention and education. And since my time there, I've continued to engage in volunteer opportunities with Naspa, and then made my way here to join Alli at the Culture of Respect to manage our collective program, which we'll talk a little bit about later on in the presentation.
Great, thanks. So we're going to dive right in and tell you a little bit about Culture of Respect, to kind of who we are and what we do here at Naspa. So our mission here at Culture of Respect is to build the capacity of educational institutions to end sexual violence through ongoing expansive organizational change. And that is a lot of fabulous and buzzy words to mean that we really want to help colleges and universities, and to some extent K through 12 as well. We do a small amount of work with K to 12 because that is very much, who becomes a college student eventually. But it's really our goal to help colleges and universities think through large-scale systemic change. What can they do kind of on all sides, on all fronts, to create a culture at their institution that does not tolerate sexual violence, and to really foster a culture of respect. So that is the work that we are lucky enough to do every day. And these are some of our kind of guiding principles that we bring to this work. So we do bring a public health framework. We refer a lot to frameworks that have been established through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, best practices, and evidence-based approaches in violence prevention and response. And really this philosophy of getting everyone to the table. We are so committed to the idea that it is not just one person's responsibility on campus to address sexual violence. It's not realistic. It's not right. There is really an obligation and an opportunity that all of us have to be part of this process. And so everything we do really comes with that perspective in mind. And we'll talk a little bit about how that figures into our work in just a little bit. So we have a couple of signature tools that we want to share with you to make sure that they're on your radar as you go through your work and your professional life. I talked just a second ago about frameworks, and we in Culture of Respect have created our own framework to help guide the way that we think about and help schools think about sexual violence, and that is called the Core Blueprint. It's you can kind of see it right there on the slide. It is these 6 areas, or 6 pillars as we call them, that help institutions think holistically about sexual violence. So it's so easy to, depending on where you're situated in an institution, to really focus in on the policies or the prevention education or one specific aspect of sexual violence prevention response. But we want schools, as we said, to be thinking really holistically about this. So everything we do comes back to this 6-pillar framework. And, you know, almost painfully so, we'll constantly be driving our institutions that we work with back to this and say, well, how does this fit into the 6 pillars? The Core Blueprint is also, incidentally, not just a framework, it is a reference material as well. We have created a roughly 75-page reference guide that pulls together best practices and promising practices around sexual violence prevention and response and organizes them around these 6 pillars. So it helps you think through what you can and should be doing in an institution, and kind of the rationale for it, like why does this particular practice make sense, or what does the evidence tell us about doing something this way? So we encourage you to go to our website, and the Core Blueprint will direct you back to the Naspa website, where you can download a free copy of the Core Blueprint. It is free and accessible to every institution. We want everyone to have access to this. The companion to the Core Blueprint is another document, also free, called the Core Evaluation, and that is a really rigorous self-assessment tool. It's about 150-ish, more probably at this point, questions, again, organized around those 6 pillars. I told you get sick of hearing about them. That really helps an institution inventory the extent to which they are operationalizing those best practices. So this core evaluation is kind of the starting place for a lot of the institutions that we work with. Think of it almost as an outside third-party audit, or an audit that an institution can do of themselves, to see kind of where they are reaching those best practices and where there's some room to grow. And again, it's totally free, the PDF of it, on the Culture of Respect website, and downloadable for any institution to use. The other tool that's free on our website that I really want to make sure people know about, although seemingly they do because it is the most frequently visited page on our website, is something called the Prevention Programming Matrix. And what this is really a clearinghouse of the leading programs in sexual violence prevention, almost like a Yelp for prevention programming, if you will. We've really amassed kind of the leading, most accessibly available programs, things that you've probably heard of, like Bringing in the Bystander and Green Dot and Haven, and all of these different programs, and compiled a page of information about each one, what the theoretical basis is, what the evidence to support its utility is, how you use it, how you get in touch with the folks who use it. And then we have created kind of a nice matrix where you can filter by what you're looking for online versus in person, theater-based versus not, if it's something for faculty or staff versus graduate students. So this is a really great starting point for folks who do prevention on campus, who may feel overwhelmed by the number of prevention education programs that exist out there, and want to just start whittling it down to even a handful of programs that they are interested in learning more about. So people really see a lot of utility in this tool, and it gets used all the time. So I'm going to stop talking there and turn it over to Jennifer to talk to you about our signature program called The Collective.
Hello again. So as I mentioned previously, I am the program manager for The Collective, the piece of Culture of Respect. So Collective is a group of institutions who join and work through a 2-year program to both assess how things currently are, as Alli talked about earlier, and then we work with them to implement organizational changes. So whether that's looking at individual policies and how we can help them make them better or be more compliant with the law, or if that's looking at new prevention programming, even introducing prevention programming, survivor services, respondent services, we work with them to develop something called an individualized implementation plan and help them make those changes, support them advocate for them, help hold them accountable. And then at the end of the 2-year program, they do that assessment again, and we look at how things have improved over that 2-year period. We currently have over 100 institutions who have been a part of the collective, and we are in cohorts 3 and 4 right now, working with them at different parts of their 2 years. And we work with a really diverse group of institutions. So we've got community colleges, we have a couple of institutions in Mexico. It's not just big institutions or primarily public or 4-year institutions. We've got a really large group of this collective, and they're able to work with one another and provide a lot of feedback to one another as well, which is really great. We also offer Foundations, which is brand new as of around December, January. And Foundations is an exciting course that allows for individuals who maybe this isn't their primary area of expertise. Maybe sexual violence prevention is completely outside of their wheelhouse, or maybe they're brand new to it, new student affairs professionals. And it's an online course with 6 modules that focus on different areas of response to sexual violence to provide student affairs professionals with that knowledge in order to help in that goal toward a culture of respect, like we say. So to help everyone become allies in sexual violence prevention, along with focusing more on social work, public health perspective, peer education, etc. And it is also available on our website. These 2 opportunities are paid opportunities, but you can learn more about them on cultureofrespect.org. So I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to speak to you all. So if I'm not sure, are they able to unmute them? I'm assuming if we can unmute ourselves, everyone else can unmute yourself. So if you'd like to speak out loud, or if you'd like to respond in the chat feature, either is all right. Let's talk a little bit about prevention, the what, the why, and the how. So where do all of you see your institution on the path to creating a culture of respect?
And we promise nothing that you say here will will be shared elsewhere.
That's a good point.
Alli and Jennifer, I have a question that came in privately, and it relates a little bit about this idea of the institutions and paths to creating sort of this culture of respect. So question really comes around the idea of creating permanent staff positions that are really dedicated to working on this on campus full time. But in light of today's uncertain financial futures for a lot of institutions, a lot of hiring has been frozen. So for folks, for example, who are working in these departments within student affairs who have been hoping to get a permanent staff member on staff, but now are sort of faced with some furloughs and some hiring freezes, is there anything that these staff can do to really highlight the importance of prioritizing hiring permanent staff for this type of work once hiring freezes are over, or exceptions that should be made in terms of hiring a permanent staff member to work specifically with campus sexual violence prevention programs?
Absolutely. I think the core evaluation is a perfect opportunity. It's, again, a very long assessment, but it's separated into the pillars. And so separating it into that survivor support, or looking at the education aspect and utilizing that for documentation for your administration. In addition to that, we do offer a set of guides and a toolkit that go along with the blueprint that provides some of that rationale and some of that defense in order to get more of these positions. But do know you are certainly not alone, and it's absolutely something we're hearing a lot from the institutions currently in our collective.
And I would just add that, and I know that this is harder to do than I'm making it sound, but I think, so much of the perspective that we take on this work is, yes, making large scale institutional change is absolutely challenging. It is not easy. It takes time and energy and resources, but it is our hope that that administrators understand that upfront work will pay so many dividends on the back end, and that by kind of investing in those individuals and investing in this collaborative, cooperative effort to foster a culture of respect in their campus, by doing all of this work, that at some point there will be a significant return on that investment, that you will see that, our early data from the first couple of cohorts from the program that we run show that folks are able to work more collaboratively and get things accomplished because of the nature of doing this work as a team, right? That they are able to create connections between departments and individuals and offices that may not have otherwise existed through this program, that will allow them to be more efficient down the line when the next thing, the next need for collaboration occurs. So I know that's a hard thing for people to wrap their head around, especially when now everything feels so immediate and kind of so like a house on fire. But we do want people to see that there are long-term returns on their investment by doing this work and by investing in that staff. I hope that helps a little bit. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Alli and Jennifer. I have a follow-up question, a little bit, not so much how people are creating pathways to this culture of respect, but some of the barriers that perhaps they have faced to creating that path. And so I have a question from someone who is at a very rural institution, and they also have had experience working at a tribal institution. And they've found that some of their experience at more rural institutions, especially tribal institutions, have proven to be a little bit less open to having these conversations on a regular basis. And so a lot of these conversations happen, or a lot of the conversations happen as a reaction to something. So what advice would either of you or both of you have for those who want to see their institution create this pathway to really focus on this work and really be dedicated to it, but there are some either cultural or resource barriers that might be preventing them from really looking at this more intentionally?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think I would say honestly that you are not alone in that. Every institution that we work with faces a barrier of some kind, and so whether it's the will is there but the resources aren't, or there's not enough people to get the work done. Like the barriers are real and they are part of this work. And I think the best suggestion I would have would be to reach out to us, and maybe we can have a conversation individually about what your specific barriers look like, maybe in a little bit more depth, so we can help you think through what some ideas might be. Because at this point, 120, it's actually 120 all-in institutions who have gone through this program. We've seen a lot, and we've helped institutions troubleshoot a lot. And sometimes I think a large part of what we do is less about the technical expertise and more about just being a sounding board to say, oh, okay, so this is where your institution is struggling. Well, let's connect you to someone else in the field who's had a similar struggle, or let's brainstorm how we can get around that. And so I'm optimistic that we can help you think through what might be some ways to break through that challenge, and help folks see the value of this work and recognize its importance. Jennifer, I don't know if you have anything you'd want to add to that.
That's amazing. And I think kind of to answer both questions a little bit, there's also the piece of and reaching out to us so we can connect you with some of these. There's some fantastic grants out there as well. I know that's not the perfect solution, but ultimately it does often come down to resources. And thankfully, a lot of these resources that do exist external to institutions are longstanding and, knock on wood, don't appear to be going anywhere. And so we can help connect you to either institutions who have successfully applied for and been awarded an OVW grant, Office of Violence Against Women, or looking at state grants. For instance, we're working with individual directors for rape prevention education in the 50 states to see how can we bring this to your states, because you're required to do this work at institutions, and how can we help you do that work? We've been working with a few states already and doing that successfully. So that's also a conversation that we're happy to have and see other creative ways of approaching these barriers.
And as we sort of are coming up to time here, we did have somebody who commented that they have started working directly with parents for a lot of their new student and transfer student programming, and really getting parents involved in understanding the work that campuses are doing individually to really understand things that are positive norms around healthy relationships and how to have good communication, as well as the work that the campuses are doing. So they just wanted to share that. But thank
That's
you
awesome.
to you. Yes, and I think that's I think that's great too. As a parent of a college student, I really do appreciate that institutions are focusing on also involving families really overall, because a student doesn't just go to college alone these days. It is really sort of a community effort in many ways. So thank you to you both for your time this afternoon. As you can see, that you have the contact information up here on the screen, but we will also make sure to share this contact information out, as well as a recording of this session.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We're just going to take a short break as we get ready to transition to our next program this afternoon, which is really around the idea of being a grad student, and thought that this was going to be a pretty easy transition. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and we will be back shortly. If you do have any questions, or if you'd like to share anything, please feel free to do so in our chat.